Now we're moving on to books 9 through 12 of the Odyssey. Some of the best parts of the Odyssey exist in this arc of the story. A lot of the things that you'll remember about the Cyclops, the Sirens, all these famous episodes get stuck into Odysseus recounting his own tales. Recall what's happened. We've been on this island of Scheria for some books. Odysseus has slowly, carefully pieced himself together. He's got his strength back. He's figured out a way to work himself back into human society. But his identity is still a riddle. His hosts don't know who he is. And only after they've given him overwhelming hospitality do they even bother, or do they even presume to ask his name. And now, starting off in Book 9, Odysseus is going to start to fill in what that identity is all about. Remember at the close of 8, the direct question came from the king, Alcinous. Now, tell us who you are. And in trying to figure out that question of identity, there were several points that Alcinous made salient. Your name, your lineage, and where you're from. What is your name, who are your parents, and what place are you from? Odysseus goes ahead and answers those right at the beginning of Book 9, sets out his own identity straightforwardly for his audience, but then he carries on to fill in the last piece. This is going to be his past. What great things have you done, Odysseus? We need to know those in order to figure out who it is that you are. So a great Greek hero's identity is going to be, yes, name, lineage, where they're from, and also a grand and glorious set of adventures in their past, what they've done, magnificent things that they've engaged in. Odysseus, now when he identifies himself, is also taking over the role of the bard in the story. He's going to become the singer of the tale. It's like Homer hands things over to him and says, go ahead, Odysseus, now you get to have the reins for a while. And then here's Odysseus, basically in perfect dactylic hexameter, just like a real poet, performing for us his own identity. He gets to take over the story now from 9 through 12 with a short breather in Book 11. Now, in the parts that we're going to turn to in the coming books, keep an eye on this certain overall structure. There are a lot of episodes that come fast and furious and lots of details, lots of adventure to come up, but there is a way that you can organize your reading of it such that you can allocate interest to the episodes that are most important. They tend to come in threes. In Book 9, we have a group of 3, the adventure with the Ciconians, then the Lotus Eaters, and then the Cyclops. In Book 10, we have another 3, Aeolus, the Lystrygonians, and Circe. Then in Book 11, a long journey into the underworld. Then in Book 12, another group of 3, the Sirens, Scylla and Charybdis, and the Cattle of the Sun. You can see our friends, the Sirens here. Careful, watch out if you start to hear their song. It's going to entice you in. So we have in each of these groupings 2 short ones and a long one. That first group of 3 in Book 9, the Ciconians and the Lotus Eaters are both actually very short. Then the Cyclops is much longer and takes up nearly half the book. In Group 2, we have Aeolus, the Lystrygonians. Those are the 2 short episodes, and then Circe, which is the much longer episode and more substantial episode in Book 10. Book 11, Long Digression in the Underworld. Same cadence takes over again in Book 12, short, short, long. Siren, Scylla, and Charybdis, and the Cattle of the Sun. Watch for several important themes. I'm just going to point to a couple. There are more that you're going to identify yourself in your own reading. Look for the idea of temptation. There are pleasures awaiting you, but those pleasures sometimes have a price associated with them. Also, curiosity goes together with temptation. To be tempted to grab something also is married in this set of stories with the idea of curiosity and gaining knowledge. Odysseus's push and drive is always a sense of, my goodness, what's that over there? It could be something amazing, and I've got to spend some time trying to get to know it. Also, look out for xenia. This idea of treating a guest in a proper way shows up in our stories, oftentimes in a perverted sense. We get examples of how not to do xenia, how not to treat your guests. Watch out for food crimes of all kinds. There are things floating around in these stories that are being treated like they're food that really shouldn't be eaten. And when you see those, keep an eye out for them. Lots of shape-shifting is going to be going on. Humans are going to be taking the shape of animals, and strange creatures are going to show up that are kind of human but not quite. Now, throughout this journey, Odysseus is constantly trying to find out new things. Most of what happens in his exploration is actually specifically keyed as a search for knowledge. He gets down to the underworld, when he gets over to Circe, he's clued into the idea that says that actually what you should be doing is finding out an important secret. There's a reason why all these terrible things are happening to you, these wonderful adventures that you're having and explorations that you're having are being forced upon you because of something. Go to the underworld to find out. There's a specific search for knowledge that's anchored from Circe forward, but really all of the episodes have built into them this kind of temptation toward some unknown thing, curiosity pulling the way. Not least behind us, we see our sirens. They have this amazing, marvelous song that's going to bring Odysseus to new depths of understanding, as we'll see. In order to get yourself a fuller sense of what these episodes are all about, take some time to link them into your memory. Get the groups of 3 straight. There's going to be a quiz that pops up in the next slide. Run through that quickly to make sure you've got each of the episodes straight in your own mind, and then we'll carry on with the rest of this lecture. During Odysseus' adventures, the farther out we go, the stranger things get. Near the beginning, we have some adventures that seem pretty much like standard hero stuff. He lands on the shores, meets the Ciconians. They clobber them, grab their treasure, and leave. Standard kind of hero pillaging behavior. Then we get to the Lotus Eaters. They seem roughly like normal people. We can converse with them. There's some social interaction back and forth, but they do have this strange fixation on this certain kind of food. They like to eat these lotus leaves. Strange, not sure what's so wonderful about them. They make them feel marvelous. There must be some kind of pharmacological effect. Odysseus' men quite love this, and Odysseus realizes, we've got to go. No sense anchoring ourselves here. For a hero, you don't want to just kind of hang around and relax. Early retirement so you can play golf is not the kind of thing a hero wants to do. Then we get to the Cyclops. With the Cyclops, things get very strange. We're definitely in the world of strangeness when we arrive there. The approach that Odysseus makes to the Cyclops is typical of the kind of approaches we're going to see in these episodes. The ship will land on shore, a party of men gets out, they scout the horizon, look for places to go, see signs of life. There might be smoke off in the far reaches, there might be a spring that they want to go to, a food source somewhere, and they start to explore. When they do, they make their way up a path, maybe up a hillside, a rocky place, a wooded place, and they get to something that's wondrous and something that's marvelous. In this case, something that's marvelously strange and frightening. They arrive at the area of the Cyclops, looking around to see what they might find, and what they mostly find on their way into this strange clumping of animals, a clumping of creatures, is that there's a lot of things that they're just missing. They're not quite like you and I, these Cyclopses. They are lacking cultivation. They don't know anything about farming. So they don't have the tools and resources to subsist on a grain-based diet. They don't have that settled farming technology. They don't have then also the kind of supplement in their diet that grain would give them, stable bread that they might have to eat and to provide them with nutrition. They're going to have to get their nutrition from somewhere else. Watch out. They don't have councils. The Cyclopses don't get together to solve problems. They don't work together to get things done. They don't form alliances. They also don't have homes. They just live in these caves, completely rustic. They're lacking each marker of civilization. Most prominent among these, or at least something that we can really remark on, is the fact that they don't have ships. These Cyclopses don't know how to build ships, and since they don't, they're not going to have contact with the outside world. They're not going to meet lots of people that are different from them, which for us great Greek heroes that we are, the traders across the Mediterranean Sea, this is a sign of great lack of civilization, not to be in contact with, networked with people that are not like you. That's very strange that the Cyclopses don't have that. in their cultural purview. They also lack, and this importantly comes out with Polyphemus, they entirely lack the idea of xenia. Remember our statement about hospitality and how important it is? We see it coursing through really most of the books of the Odyssey. It surely shows up usually in a negative way in these episodes. We see people not performing the proper kind of xenia or hospitality. The Cyclopses are really most prominent example of this. They don't understand the basic guest-host relationship. Cyclops, the Polyphemus, doesn't realize that he's supposed to be providing a gift to the people that arrive in his house. He doesn't know how to do it. He's not generous. He doesn't provide Odysseus and his men with the kind of overwhelming hospitality that a real good host is supposed to do. You might think that Odysseus and his men are a little bit rude because they just keep rummaging around on their own looking for it and asking for it right in the Cyclops' face. They ask for a gift. That might seem a little bit forward or a little bit presumptuous, but actually Homer doesn't seem to bat an eye about it. And the reason that he doesn't is because he thinks presumably that, well, this is a great hero, of course he should be getting some gift giving, but of course he gets none. The gifts in the episode show up in interesting ways. Odysseus is repeatedly asking for one when he arrives there. Hey, where's my gift? I'm a guest in your house, where's my gift? Cyclops doesn't provide it. Then also there is that wine that Odysseus brings from his ship as they're making their way into the center of the island to look for this civilization, and they grab that and take that with them. Odysseus recalls it as a gift that he got himself, a guest gift that he got himself from a hero called Meron. Odysseus had saved his family, as heroes might do sometimes. Meron then gave him the gift of the wine. Odysseus is now going to use this. Later on in the episode, it becomes his perverted gift to Cyclops. He says, here, why don't you have some of this wine? Well, what it's going to do is not make the Cyclops enjoy wine such as people do under normal circumstances. It's going to utterly debilitate him so that Odysseus and his mates can do some awful things and poke out the one eye the poor Cyclops has. I keep saying poor Cyclops. I'm not sure why I feel sorry for him. I do a little bit anyway. But so they just drill this awful heated post into the Cyclops' eye. The thing is now blinded and utterly maimed. Having failed to give gifts to Odysseus' men, he gets this nasty one in return. Now, the gift giving and the laws of xenia are consistently violated in this scene. Where they're violated at their worst is when the Cyclops decides not to serve food to Odysseus' men, but instead to use Odysseus' men as his own food. He grabs two of Odysseus' compatriots right when he sees them, smashes their head against the ground, and eats their brains. This is very bad manners. You're not supposed to do this kind of thing. Instead, a good host is supposed to feed his guests, not feed on his guests. The Cyclops goes ahead and does that. The worst perversion of all that one can imagine for the rules of xenia. It's not only that the Cyclops is ignoring the rules of xenia, it's that the Cyclops is actually perverting them, turning them inside out in awful, awful ways. This brings us to universal law number 3. Universal law number 3, pretty much held true across all of human society. All my universal laws are like that. Universal law number 3 is, it's not good to be food. It is not good to be food. Human beings do not like the idea of becoming food for other creatures. It is a source of revulsion to us. It's so awful that it causes us to have an awful kind of disgust response. Ugh. It's not just terrifying or frightening, it's actually utterly disgusting. The violence that's involved in killing someone is here gone a further step as a ripped up human being is now chewed on, swallowed, and metabolized. The full annihilation that comes through metabolism seems to be what's at the core of just how awful it is to imagine a human being becoming food. Then there's also the problem that reminds us that whatever living things there are out there in the world survive, it's true, by eating other living things. That's a sad thing about the organic world, but it is indeed nearly universally true that living things survive by eating other living things. When you and I start to think of ourselves as food, we place ourselves in this very broad spectrum of all of living things out there who are part of a food chain. I think that there's a part of us that likes to think of ourselves as much more special than that, and not just as a member in a food chain. It makes us it's awful for us to think of ourselves as belonging to that part of what it is to be inside to be a living organism as well. Now, to make his way out of this particular problem, Odysseus has this amazingly clever idea of debilitating the Cyclops rather than killing him. Killing the Cyclops, they'd be stuck in the cave, so he debilitates him. This then gives Odysseus a means to get out of the cave, straps himself to the bottom of the ram and has his mate strapped to the bottom of the other animals in the flock, and they escape out the open door underneath these animals, where the Cyclops tries to check the animals to make sure nothing funny is going on, but Odysseus and his men get through and get out. Not before Odysseus, in a further sense of cleverness, introduces another of the famous tricks in this episode. When he's tormenting the Cyclops is asking his name. Odysseus says, my name is No Man. Now the Polyphemus, being sure that the person that is having all this, doing all this mischief in his own cave is named No Man, when his neighbors come over to ask him, what's wrong, Polyphemus, he says to his fellow Cyclopses, well, No Man is harming me. No man is harming me. At which point the fellows, not too bright, say, oh, okay, well, if no one's harming you, we'll just go back to our business. So they just depart and go away. Odysseus then adopts this pure anonymity, the name of no name. He in some ways loses his name in the Cyclops episode. Not though quite well enough. It marks his entrance into a certain kind of anonymity in this strange world, but Odysseus, on his way out, like great heroes, he can't stand the idea that the Cyclops might go through the rest of his life not knowing who it is that beat him. So as he and his men are escaping, Odysseus shouts back, oh, and by the way, in case anyone wants to know, the one who blinded you and beat you at this competition is Odysseus. Now, when he does that, Odysseus can't help but give his name so that his fame can spread and his glory can spread for having bested Polyphemus. But what he does is give Polyphemus now a means to draw down a curse on Odysseus. Odysseus would have been completely anonymous had he not told Polyphemus his name. Shouting out his name at the end gives him the glory of having bested Polyphemus, but it now gives Polyphemus the means to call down a terrible curse on Odysseus. Without the name, Polyphemus would have been powerless to do it. The name gives him a way in. It's like his address, his special identity. Now that Polyphemus knows Odysseus' identity, he can say to his father, who just happens to be Poseidon, sorry Odysseus, bad mistake, just happens to be Poseidon, Dad, take care of that awful man, Odysseus, who took care of me. And when he does that, Polyphemus will surely answer him, and nasty things are going to come Odysseus' way. Now, if we wanted to take a half step back and try to think about this episode as a whole, Cyclops represents, according to one of the tools that we've already seen in our course, a wonderful example of a kind of social lesson on the importance of xenia. In the case of Polyphemus, and this is the kind of reading I've been developing for you, in the case of Polyphemus, this example of xenia is actually a perverted example. He stands as a perfect negative example of what not to do. And with this story, all the Greeks that are reading it can sit back and listen to a myth that underlines and underscores the importance of proper guest treatment, the importance of properly treating a guest. Without doing that, a person's running the risk of being compared to one of these awful criminals, the Cyclops himself. So make sure that you uphold xenia, you Greeks, otherwise you might start thinking, some people might start thinking that you're acting like a Cyclops, and boy, that would be a horrible thing for people to think about you.